meeting of the Waco City Council on March 15th, 2022 to order at 3 p.m. All council members are present except for Councilmember Bearfield, who is attending remotely. Hello, Councilmember Bearfield. It's great to see you. And even if remotely, and Councilmember Palmer, who has let me know that she's on her way and will be here momentarily. Please join me for a moment of silence. Thank you. We provide an opportunity for the public to address the City Council on any agenda item, excuse me, or during the hearing of visitors portion of the agenda. On items other than public hearings, speakers will be allotted 1 3-minute presentation regardless of the number of agenda items the speaker wishes to address. If you're here to speak and have not filled out a registration card, please see the City Secretary, staff at the registration table outside of the auditorium to provide registration information so that staff can contact you if necessary. If you have handouts, please let us know at the beginning of your presentation and staff will distribute those to council. If you're unable to approach the podium due to physical limitations, a microphone is available to be brought to you. As I mentioned, there'll be plenty of opportunities to address this council on agenda items, but for now, is there anyone who would like to speak on a work session item? Or have there been any cards filed? All right, if not, then we will recess the regular session and convene a work session with a report from our city manager.
Thanks, Mayor, and welcome City Council members and to the public today. We don't have any changes to the agenda this afternoon, and as the council is well aware, we have a very large agenda today. With 4 work sessions and a council packet that's about 450 pages thick. So in the interest of time, instead of doing my normal city manager's report in which I highlight various resolutions and things of that nature, I'm just going to simply take a moment now to inquire if there's any questions or comments from the council on agenda items that are not covered in the work sessions today.
What are you asking for, Bradley? You're asking if we have any comments on the resolutions?
Yeah. Or
in general, you're not going to walk through them?
Yeah, just Jim, for sake of time, because of how full this agenda is and out of fear for, because of the number of work sessions, this is your chance to bring comment to them.
Unless, if it's an item that's on a work session, you can cover it then. But otherwise.
I'm going to comment on a couple of resolutions. I'll take 2 minutes max. I'm very supportive of Resolution 174. The Aston Johnson non-woven manufacturing company moving into town. It's not a great number of jobs, 36 jobs, but it's a $40 million investment, which will help our tax base. It's an interesting company. If you do a little bit of diligence on it, it's over 250 years old. It was started in England and Vienna, Austria. There's an old wireworks company, and it's coming to Waco. And I'm excited about what this company will do for Central Texas. The other resolution I just wanted to comment on is the heads up and the good communication that we're staying ahead of on 185, Resolution 185, where our it has to do with the Silo District Marathon and event, which is coming up in April, which I hope everybody will participate in and visit. But the heads up, particularly on the, as it affects my district out in the China Spring neighborhoods, there's a lot of times where the marathon parts cover those intersections. And I think communication is great. And as that event approaches and other cycling and marathon events occur and that run through that district, I think communication is key, and that's what we're doing here, and I appreciate that. And the last comment I had was on Resolution 189, which is also my district, West Highway 84, the wastewater improvements that we're launching out there. It looks like we're done with phase 1, which is some of the wastewater lines. We still have some lift stations to work on there, but big projects and big dollars, and much appreciation from our neighborhoods out there that are rapidly growing and need the infrastructure. So all good things. Thanks.
Of the few agenda items today that I'm allowed to speak or vote on. I did want to express my enthusiasm for the canceling of the mayoral and District 3 elections, which is really, I think, is really great for the community.
All right, well, if there's no further questions, I'll conclude, I think that's the shortest report of
Bradley,
my tenure.
I'll just add to the, on
Oh, I tried.
the Ashton Johnson one. I just appreciate, our team worked really quickly on this one, and I just want to appreciate our city staff, our legal staff, Jennifer, and our economic development partners that are here today. This is an exciting project, as Jim mentioned, because of the significant capital investment into our community and the tax revenue that will certainly be generated from that. And so excited to partner with this organization and its coming into our community, and welcome the significance of that. So, thankful for the significance of that and welcome them to Waco. And just a special thank you to our staff. And that's all.
That is actually all I have, so I'll turn it over to you to establish the consent agenda.
Is there any item that council would like to remove from the consent agenda? If not, then the consent agenda will include resolution 2022-170 through 189, except for 171, 172, and 173. The next item on the agenda is work session 2022-151 through 154. Bradley, would you please introduce the first work session?
Sure, we're going to start off with 151. That's the discussion of the planning public hearing items, and Clint has quite a few to walk through. If anyone's not familiar, Clint Peters is our Director of Development Services, and I'll turn the mic over to him.
Thank you, Bradley. Thank you, Mayor and City Council. We do have 9 public hearings tonight. And start going through them. The first one is dealing with a voluntary annexation at 215 acres on property along Bagby Avenue in the Texas Central Industrial Park area. This property is adjacent to the Sendero Springs subdivision, and that's a boundary, a current city limit boundary, and they are requesting voluntary annexation and then zoning of mostly M2 zoning on the property, but about 23 acres of O2 zoning, which is a mixed office and residential zoning district. This is in the Kendrick Neighborhood Association, and if annexed, will be in Council District 3. Planning Commission did recommend approval of this voluntary annexation in the zoning, proposed zoning. The developer is still working on some details with infrastructure construction and would like to delay this till our next council meeting, which would be April 5th. And so they are requesting a continuance of the public hearing till the April 5th meeting, and staff is supportive of that continuance. We will have to republish some of the noticing in the newspaper on our website, and then send out notices to the property owners within 200 feet. But we are recommending approval of the continuance.
Mr. Peters, what was the request, the basis for the request for the continuance on that again? I'm sorry, I missed it.
So there is a plan. You can see Gateway Boulevard runs between Texas Central and Bagby, and as part of their development plans, they plan to extend Gateway through to I-35 frontage road, and they're still working on some of the logistics and design of that, and they would like to get all that more finalized before they actually have the annexation take place.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
So we're going to wait till the next meeting? Is that what we're saying?
Yes, ma'am. That would be our recommendation. We will need to open the public hearing, but our recommendation would be to continue it to the April 5th City Council meeting.
Okay, Josh, I know this is in your district, but we need to really be careful. That's a big residential area over there, and we don't want to put something out there that will disturb the neighborhood. And I know we've not allowed in the past some things to go there, and I'm just wanting us to be watching out for these things that are going to go in there, the self-storage warehouses, to make sure that there's plenty of buffer and privacy for the neighborhood and the residential area that's around there.
Yes, ma'am. One of the good things about this property, the city boundary that abuts the Sendero Springs neighborhood is South Flat Creek, and there's a lot of floodplain in there, so there's some natural buffer that will be protected in the development process.
I'm out there a
adjacent to
lot.
the
My
subdivision.
family lives
Yeah.
out there, so I'm out there a lot.
Yeah,
I'll be watching.
Sure.
I'll be watching. Thank you, Clint.
sure. The next public hearing is a request from Sensata Development on behalf of RAS Investments. This is an amendment to a special permit for self-storage warehouse in C2 zoning district to expand the self-storage warehouse facilities. This is a property 1821 through 1829 South New Road. This is a property that wraps around the convenience store at the corner of Bagby and New Road. I believe that's still Stripes. I know they've just got bought out and changing, but I think it's still Stripes. And then this is the new development where you have Top Golf and the movie theater and Main Event that was recently developed. The front part of this was recently developed for Amy's. It's called Amy's Attic Self-Storage, and they're wanting to just expand that in the back now. It's currently zoned C2. You can see most of the properties around there are either C2 or C3 zoning. Here's the property. You can see the front part of it is currently already developed. And then this would be the portion that they would be adding on to their special permit. It is a little bit different product. Most of this is climate controlled up front. And this would be more of the kind of your traditional self-storage where you pull up. It has the garage doors in the back. Here's some renderings of that. Here's the front, again, that's already built, and I'll show some pictures of it in its final state. And they'll be using that same similar facade for the units in the back with the garage doors open for each unit. And then here's the current facility looking from New Road, and then looking back into the facility, and then back behind it. This is the convenience store here. Planning Commission did recommend approval of that amendment to include that. We did mail out 10 notices and had 0 returned, and Planning Commission recommended approval by a vote of 10-0 with 1 abstention.
Clint, did you say that there's natural screening behind there, right? As it looks under that, it's multifamily right behind?
Yes,
Yeah,
so they,
on that map.
right. So the property lines here has some screening and some fencing that was put in with this. They are going to leave this part that fronts out the Bagby vacant for future development. I think they anticipate developing it for a use that's already allowed by right in C2. But the sidewalk and landscaping along the frontage there will be put in when it's about 2 acres when that portion of it develops.
Clint, why is there a gap in between here? Why is there a gap in the screening?
Because that adjacent property there is zone C3, which doesn't require screening requirements between commercial properties.
Is it visible from the road or anything like that?
Let's see if we got a picture. It's kind of hard to see, but so this is looking towards that C3. That's the new station property there.
Yep.
I believe there is a fence that runs along that side, a privacy fence that runs along there. It just doesn't have the landscaping.
I would ask for, go back to the map, please. Really, really thick, robust, high quality, high level screening on all sides, including that one strip right there that's currently not included. I'm comfortable with a special permit because in some senses this will be screened by the warehouse on New Road. But just think that this is kind of one of the gateways into the city off of I-35 as you're pulling in to Waco. Many people who are coming to visit a relative or coming into the city for specific business, this is one of the first things they see. So having not the minimal level of screening is, I want to have a really robust screening for this. And then also, what is the fencing requirements? Is there a fencing requirement too, or is it just landscaping?
So for special permits, we can add additional conditions, but for a standard screening requirement, it can be a combination of landscaping and fencing or just fencing, but it does have to be privacy fencing.
So I would like a high quality fencing, maybe even I think I want wrought iron fence and really high, like thick, dense vegetation on all sides of the perimeter.
Okay. So we can add a condition to that.
That's great.
I guess in those situations where there's already privacy fencing there along the property lines,
are they building new fences, or is there fencing that exists all together?
I believe there's privacy fencing along their facility between the apartment and then along the back.
They're adding the vegetation screening. Are they going to be tearing that down to add the vegetation screening, or just putting it on?
We'll have to find that out. I'm not sure about that.
Okay. Let me know what the plan is for that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, I concur with the mayor on that.
Okay. We'll try to find that out before tonight.
I do too, Mayor, because that's the entrance. A lot of folks come in from I-35 to go to WISD Stadium.
Yep.
So there's a lot of out-of-towners that come in, and I'm glad you brought that up, Mayor. I totally agree.
Yeah, we'll see if we can get some pictures from that perspective looking, see what you can see from back there.
Great. Thanks.
All right, so our next public hearing is a request from Salvation Army. This is a special permit for transitional shelter 2 and O2 zoning. This is at 1324 LaSalle Avenue. It's just about a 10-acre tract in the Alta Vista neighborhood in Council District 1. Did want to go over the definition of what the transitional shelter is. It is a residential facility providing temporary shelter for persons who are receiving therapy and or counseling from support staff who are present at all times. The residents are present for one or more of the following purposes. It doesn't have to be all these things, but these are the purposes that could be included in transitional shelter. To help residents recuperate from effects of drug or alcohol addiction. 2 is what the Salvation Army's facility is to help homeless persons or families achieve independence and obtain permanent housing. And then 3 is to provide temporary shelter for persons who are victims of domestic abuse. But number 2 is what fits in with Salvation Army's request. So this property is at the corner of LaSalle and 12th Street. It does wrap around some developed properties right at the corner and backs up to Primrose Creek. There's an adjacent industrial building on both sides, and then you have the gas station here. There's also Phipps Memorial is across here, and then you have the StarTex propane across the street on the other corner of LaSalle.
But there's a lot of housing there on 12th Street, a lot of student housing, some new houses that have gone up there, and I've seen a lot of student housing, students there. I'm real uncomfortable with this, Clint, where it's at. There's a lot of housing around that area, a lot of folks that live in the Oakwood and Primrose area. I don't know how much lighting we have all up and down LaSalle, but Bradley, is there somebody here from the streets that can maybe answer that? But if this is going to happen, and I'm real uncomfortable with it, we need to have a lot more lighting out on LaSalle, because My office is on LaSalle, and at night it's very dark when I leave that area. So to make people maybe be more comfortable or feel safer, I think more lights need to be all up and down LaSalle. Also, as I travel down 4th Street and 3rd Street to where the Hotel Indigo is at, I see a lot of homeless people sleeping on sidewalks. And I don't know that that will be happening or that won't be happening there on 13th. And I think that's what scares a lot of folks. And I don't know if the Salvation Army people can alleviate some of our concerns about that. I'm not sure. I'm real uncomfortable with this, only because of where it's at and the housing that's on Oakwood and Primrose and all around there, and the other offices that are on LaSalle. I think the LaSalle Overlay Committee is working real hard to make LaSalle a prettier place for people to want to come down LaSalle, and they want to feel safe there as well. So I don't know that more lighting would help. I'm not sure. But, and I certainly, I know our businesses don't want to see folks sleeping on the sidewalks and up and down LaSalle. So I don't know that these issues can be addressed by the Salvation Army folks. Clint, I'm not sure, but.
Sure. Why don't, I can go through kind of what they're proposing, and then, you know, we've added some conditions to the special permit recommendation based on the input we got from some of the public meetings with the LaSalle Avenue Overlay Steering Committee. And we'll go through those, and then maybe there'll be some questions from that. And then obviously Salvation Army will have somebody here tonight that can speak to some of their plans to maybe address some of the questions you have.
And could you also ask them to tell us what kind of security they will be having on the property, and to alleviate some of the concerns also?
Sure. So the property is currently zoned O2, which allows all of their proposed uses, and I'll go through all of them on the next slide, but allows all their proposed uses by right. And so the part of their operations that needs a special permit that's for consideration tonight is the transitional shelter portion of it. So here's their proposed site plan. LaSalle Avenue is on the bottom of the page here, and then you got 12th Street here. They do propose a driveway off LaSalle, and then a driveway off South 12th Street. Currently, their facilities are kind of divided up all over town. They have 3 different locations, and what they're trying to do is consolidate all their operations to one site, so they can provide better and more efficient services to their customers. With a consolidated campus, they have their offices and their admin are currently on the Waco Drive location, where they have the thrift store. The thrift store operation will remain on Waco Drive, but all their admin offices propose to move, and that would be what you have in the front of the buildings. Their worship center, which is currently off of I-35 and 11th Street, would also relocate over here, and that would be on the front as well. And this is where they have the Center for Worship, and then their Center for Hope, which is their social service building that includes a lot of their services that they provide for, like, for example, emergency financial assistance, their food pantry, their rental assistance, clothing and food, furniture vouchers, their community kitchen, and then meeting spaces for outside social services providers for mental and physical health. They also have educational classes, financial management, resume writing, job training, male laundry, locker, showers, services that will all be located here. The portion that will have the overnight shelter is in the back part here. It is proposed to have 30 beds for men, 16 beds for women, and then 16 apartment units for families, and these will be 2-bedroom units. A lot of that, the family portion of that is a new service they'll be providing, and then the current men's and women's shelter are the facility downtown.
Where is that gonna be? Where on this?
It's in the Center for Hope on this back portion right here.
Okay.
And then another new service they'll be providing is the day shelter. Currently, they do not have that service provided, and so at the shelter they provide meals during the day for lunch, breakfast, and dinner, and then they provide overnight shelter, but they do not provide a place for people to go during the day. So that will be a new service that they'll provide at this facility, and should alleviate some of the issues with people, hanging out waiting for to be able to come into the facility for services, because they'll have opportunities for people to come in there during the daytime.
Clint, in that picture, on the left-hand side, it says secure staff parking. And then on the right-hand side, it looks like parking as well. Or what is that? Is that, it doesn't say that it's secure parking on the right-hand side.
So,
But it looks like parking, looks like they,
yeah, so that's one thing. They're still working these plans out. This is kind of their first go at it. They are going to get input, more input on the design. The visitor parking would be up front. We're here, and then this would be parking for either staff or people that they're using the facilities, or visiting the facilities from some of the other agencies.
Is this, a question for Salvation Army, I'll look for a head nod. Is this design done? Have y'all completed this, or is it able to be edited and changed? It would be edited? Because I don't like, personally, when I look at this,
Mayor?
yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we have to wait for the applicant and anybody opposed to speak at the public hearing.
Okay.
And so if council wouldn't mind directing their questions to Clint during this work session, and then any other questions could be saved for the public hearing.
Is it appropriate for this purposes of this special permit, or for a future operating agreement that we'll be entering into with Salvation Army to discuss the placement of the parking lot as part of their site plan?
That would be something that can be talked about with a special permit. One of the conditions that we have is that it meet the LaSalle Avenue corridor district standards, which does allow parking in the front. It does not allow any overnight parking, and so any overnight parking would have to be in these back parking lots.
But we could,
but that could be something that could be added
as a part of a condition to the special permit, we could say where parking could go.
That's correct.
Okay.
Clint,
Yes, ma'am.
here I go again. Sorry. The floodplain, does that not affect this area at all? I see in the back it says floodplain, but I know several folks that are in the LaSalle area have been told that the floodplain area hits them, and so what will this, is this in the floodplain?
Yes, ma'am. The majority of the property is in the floodplain, so they'll have to meet all the floodplain development requirements, and they have started working with our Public Works stormwater management group to figure out what the requirements are, but this property is in the floodplain. But the floodplain is shallow on this property, especially up on the front part, and so there is mitigating design features they can do to meet all the requirements for that and develop on that property.
Clint, can I add something to that?
Yep.
As part of, the city is the owner of this piece of property, and prior to the closing of that transaction, we did conduct a flood study with Walker Partners, who determined that if the site was to be developed in a manner shown, like we're seeing on this graphic, that those mitigating concepts that Clint is talking about can occur back towards the floodplain area, and the site could be developed as proposed by the Salvation Army in accordance with our, and as Clint said, the Public Works team took a look at that as well. So of the 9.5 acres or so, about 6.5 can be developed.
Thanks, Bradley. Here's some examples of some other facilities around the state, Salvation Army facilities that have been developed that have that consolidated campus look. This is one in Temple that was recently developed, and then this is one in Galveston, and then one in Kerrville. And what you can see is they've really tried to fit the architecture of the area. Obviously we probably won't look like Galveston or Kerrville, but they'll work to design it that fit in kind of with architecture, Art Deco style along LaSalle Avenue. They've engaged with RBDR architects to be their design team, who are familiar with the LaSalle corridor efforts. They're actually the design professionals that worked on some of the prototypes and concept for the LaSalle Avenue plan. So they're real familiar with those standards, and will work to design it to fit in with the look that's being desired along LaSalle Avenue. Here's some pictures of the site. This is looking from LaSalle. This is looking from the median of LaSalle towards the property. You can see it's got a lot of trees on it right now. It's vacant. This is looking up LaSalle towards the circle, and then back towards Baylor on LaSalle. And this is 11th Street. You can see the property here, and then back towards the south, where the Primrose Creek is.
Clint, on the median, I see a lot of folks out there working on the median and clearing the trees and picking up the trash. Is that that's the city doing that, or who is doing that work?
That is a TxDOT right away, but I believe the landscaping, we maintain it. That was a grant that we got through the state the governor's office for that landscaping, so the city maintains that.
Well, sometimes it looks real pretty and sometimes it does not, but I think we need to work on that if we're going to put something there on 13th Street.
I have a question really quick for Bradley. So my understanding is we're going to be entering into another agreement with Salvation Army, commensurate with the sale of this property, that will have to do with some operational requirements. Is that correct?
That is the anticipation. We don't have that in front of you today because we wanted you to handle the zoning designation first.
But there will be an opportunity for us to address, I think it's helpful for us to understand kind of the scope of what you're anticipating being a part. Do we need to put, I guess the question that I'm asking myself right now is, what level of concerns need to be addressed as a part of the special permit, and what concerns need to be addressed, like cleanup along LaSalle? Is that something that we need to be thoughtful about at this juncture, or is that going to be as a part of the operation agreement that we'll be entering into at a later date? And whether or not that makes its way into either of those things, I'm not saying. I'm just trying to understand, what do we put into the special permit and what do we put into the operation agreement?
I think for the special permit, I think the planning staff and the plan commission have put together a strong list of special conditions that serve as a great foundation for your discussion today and tonight. There may be some additional element you want to add, and those would cover only the on-site characteristics of lighting or landscaping or parking locations. As we move our way off-site, like there's trash on LaSalle or we need additional lighting on LaSalle, more than likely that's a conversation that we need to have more globally, because those are probably issues that we're having whether or not the Salvation Army locates here or not, it sounds like. So I'd rather engage on those matters separately from the special permit.
Okay. Thank you.
And I did want to go through some of the special provisions, the conditions. A lot of these are, above and beyond our normal special permit conditions that are specific to this site and development that we put in there based on discussions with Salvation Army, but also listening to input from some of the property owners, around the site and with the steering committee. So I'll go over a couple of those. One being the permittee will work in good faith with LaSalle Avenue Overlay District Steering Committee to ensure that the final site design facade facing LaSalle Avenue and the operational standards for a facility work to advance the goals of a safe, accessible, vibrant, and sustainable corridor as laid out in LaSalle Avenue Economic Development Strategy. And so Salvation Army has promised to engage with that group to get input on their design and some of that, how the property looks and operates, especially along LaSalle. We have our standard site plan must meet all development standards consistent with the site design requirements of Plan Review Committee, and that includes the site grading and drainage, floodplain, parking signage, vehicle, pedestrian access and circulation, landscaping, refuse location and access, fire protection, location access, and then the LaSalle Avenue Corridor District Overlay, which has some specific requirements on how the facade is developed and parking requirements, and also sidewalk requirements on both frontages. And then we also have an addition to extend the sidewalk because that property does not go all the way to the corner there, and they are required by the overlay to put in sidewalk on their frontages. We did put a condition in there that they extend that sidewalk all the way to the corner of 12th and LaSalle on both streets, so you have continuous sidewalk all the way to that intersection. We also put a condition in there that the max number of beds be 100 and that it be limited to transitional residential care. We also put a requirement in there about a transit stop shall be constructed in accordance with the City of Waco transit system standards along 12th Street. There is a current bus route that runs along, go back to the site plan, along 12th Street. So the idea would be that they would build a pull-off area for the bus to, with a bus shelter and a bus stop there. So, people come to this facility or anywhere else, it would be a public bus stop, would have a place that would be off the street there. And then the permit is recommended for a period of 5 years, so we can have a check-in to make sure that it's met all the standards and it's functioning in accordance with all the requirements, and that that the council at that time can have another look at it.
Go back to the list, please.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thanks, Clint.
And then because this is going to take probably a couple of years to develop, we did put that 5 years starting at the time of the certificate of occupancy, and not at the time of the issuing of the permit. And so that would be 5 years from when the building would be occupied. And then the Plan Commission did add a condition to add a privacy fence to be installed along the northern property line that abuts South 12th Street. So that would be that section.
Go back to that map, yeah.
Yeah, that section that is across from where the residential area is. So along this property line here. And then on the back property line is where you have the Primrose drainage channel, and so that would not have any fencing requirements along it. Plan Commission did recommend approval with all these conditions by a vote of 11-0. We did have quite a bit of input on this request. We did mail out 37 notices. We had one person that came and spoke to staff opposing it. And then we had 3 emails opposed, one after the Plan Commission meeting, and then one person voiced their opposition in person prior to the Plan Commission meeting. And then 2 people at the Plan Commission hearing spoke in opposition, and then we had 5 people speak in favor, with another 7 that stood in support of the request. With that, I'll take any questions.
Can I ask Clint, the 5 people that spoke in favor of the, were those business owners or residents that lived along the LaSalle area where all this would be affected? Do you know?
My understanding, all of them were either property owners or
Of the
business
LaSalle?
owners along LaSalle.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Mayor.
I have a question. If we wanted to, I think about Compassion Ministries on Austin Avenue and the way that they thoughtfully designed their property to really be able to provide excellent service to the families that they're serving, but also really provide a secure location to those neighbors. And I look at the design of this, and it's very different from that because of all the parking surrounding the front. And so my question is, something that I'd like to see is really have that building moved closer to the front of the street. And I don't know what all that entails, but just kind of drawing on the model that we've seen as a successful ministry serving a similar population with great excellence, albeit very different in operations and very different in mission. But drawing upon that, seeing if the building could be moved to really be close to the front and not have the parking, so much parking facing LaSalle Avenue as a part of the condition as well. On site, I think Councilmember Rodriguez's questions about the significance of lighting should be addressed. And I really like the idea of having a drop-off on site only instead of a bus route on 12th Street. I think that if there's a way that we could have a secure drop-off on location, personally, that's a preference of mine that we can certainly debate or discuss. And then I like the idea of having a vegetation screen along the fence as well. Those are just some initial thoughts I have, but we can have greater discussion, I think, in the public hearing.
I'll save some of my comments for the public hearing, but I'll also say here this afternoon, I see the need and the desire for the Army to kind of consolidate operations and be a little more efficient. They're kind of spread out 3 different locations right now, which is not the best way to run an entity. But I'm also sympathetic to the concerns of local businesses. So I think we need to communicate and be conscious and listen. I like the pretty comprehensive list of conditions, and just not the ones you had on that page. There are 16 conditions here that we're imposing on this special permit. So I gain a level of comfort in that. And I like the idea of having, incorporating lighting, as Alice has mentioned, and policing too. I think we've mentioned that, and I saw that mentioned in the Plan Commission hearing. But overall, this is a delicate subject, obviously, but I think we're moving in the right direction on putting these conditions in place.
Questions or comments for Clint on this one? Thank you, Clint, on that one.
All right, we'll move to the next public
But,
hearing.
Andrea, were you going to say something?
We're having trouble hearing Andrea.
She's on
Andrea, sorry about that. We can't hear you.
mute. Is it on our end?
Still not.
Should have done a test run. Sorry about that. We will figure this out and come back to that. Does that work okay?
Yeah, that'll be good. One thing, Mayor, that I wanted to, not to reopen this dialogue too much, but I think it would be, Clint talked about public input that we've received, and I think it would be fair for me to quickly report, there was a joint neighborhood meeting last Thursday night in which LaSalle business owners and property owners did come out in pretty significant numbers. I would say 25 to 30 attended, and predominantly, perhaps close to unanimously, not in favor of the matter because of its impact on, or perceived impact on their businesses or homes in that area. So thought that we'll probably have a few of those folks join us this evening, I would suspect. I did reach out to anybody that put their email on the sign-in sheet and gave them the timing and instructions on how to provide the council comments for the hearing tonight. So hopefully we'll see a few of those folks here this evening. Sorry?
Ready for Andrea?
Yeah. Is Andre there? Oh, there she is.
She is.
Oh, we heard you.
Works.
There she goes.
Thank you, Mayor and City Manager Ford. To be clear, and my colleagues have addressed some of the concerns, and we've heard from several of the business owners, several of the residents in this area. Councilmember Rodriguez is absolutely right about additional lighting. But the one thing that I think is most beneficial for this is that, we are and have been, I think, walking with the Salvation Army in this from the beginning of this process. And I think it should serve as kind of like a overarching calming that, we have with the conditions that were placed on this, with, I think, the impetus that the city will be working with this organization, that the priority and safety of everyone, not just those seeking those services, but those in the neighborhood that surround that service, their safety is our priority. And, that's something that I think should carry a little bit more weight. I think that Mayor Meek is correct in that switching the scale to more urban, so you're straight up to as close to the street as possible would do better with with parking and things on the side, because it changes, it would keep in line with what the overlay is set to be. We have all, those of us who are involved with the LaSalle Avenue overlay and the redevelopment and revitalization of LaSalle know the importance of the new look and design and re-energizing that corridor. But I don't think having this facility in that space will change that. Working with the LaSalle Avenue overlay folks in design, working with the city of Waco and all of its departments, including PD, fire, all of those things, I think is a benefit to, with transit, I think will be a benefit to it. So I do have a question though for you, Mayor. You were mentioning in transportation, you said a drop-off site. Can you explain to me what you mean?
There was a condition, I believe, on the list, Clint, I don't know how hard it is to go to that said, pull it up, maybe I misread it.
Building a station, building a stop.
Yeah, and in talking to some of the neighbors personally, my understanding is that they understand the importance of folks having ample access to transportation to this location, but we're drawing concerns on what, Jennifer?
Clint, would you just go back one slide, please?
Thanks. On the site being, the drop-off site being so close to residents. And so we're wondering if the access to transportation there could be a stop more on-site, like on the site map, like maybe as a part of that. There's like a loop that goes through the facility. So instead of being off-site on 12th Street, actually pretty far from the facility itself, where someone would have to walk a ways to get to the facility, having something that literally the bus line or the bus would, or the transportation vehicle would come on site and have a drop-off on site for folks who are seeking services of the Salvation Army in lieu of on the back side of the property near homes. And so to me, that achieves the goal of meeting residents' concern, but also ensuring that folks seeking the services of Salvation Army have access to transportation and are able to get there.
Mayor, I wonder though, the other side of that coin is thinking that that is near some student housing, thinking about our international students or our students that don't drive, that potential additional bus stop could be an asset for the neighborhood if it was outside of the property lines.
And I think as we engage in discussion on transit and bus stops, to me, that is something that I would be, if we were to meet with Waco Transit and they came to us and they were like, hey, we really want a bus stop here. This really makes sense for us to have a bus stop here because of the need for students to have access to the university. Then I'd be like, great, let's have that discussion. But in context of it being as a part of this special permit, with regard specifically to the folks who are seeking the services of the Salvation Army, it feels like it's a win. It's meeting the Salvation Army's core need, which is that their folks are able to have access. And it also meets the needs of folks who live there who question why would there be a bus stop over here for the folks that have to walk away over here when we could just like more directly drop folks who are seeking the services on site.
Speaking of the public transportation, Bradley, Clint, who do I address this to? Jennifer.
Everybody.
There is already a bus route down LaSalle with Waco Transit, right? Because from my office, I see it pass quite regularly. So there is a bus route down LaSalle. So the students do have access. That's my point. The students already have access to bus transportation down LaSalle with Waco Transit.
I think one thing I would suggest is perhaps, I kind of like how it's worded here on the screen because we're not yet engaged with a voice in this conversation that really matters, and that's the Waco Transit team, who has definite opinions on what might be the best sequencing and type of movement that the bus needs to take. Because as y'all are well aware, and the audience may not be as well aware as the council, anytime that bus is making a left turn, that's a real sensitive movement. And they're probably gonna have some opinions related to safety that I think we need to be mindful of. So I think as written, it gives us still the option to go 12th Street or on-site. Perhaps we need to add along LaSalle potentially as well. I just want to give ourselves flexibility to get the opinions of the transit team in that conversation.
Couldn't we always add a bus stop on the side of 12th Street if we wanted to after engaging conversations with transit?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a system that we control and manage. Are you saying you want to pull that all together?
No, I just saying, I mean, personally, I don't know why we would, knowing that we can always add one on the side of 12th Street if transit or the neighborhood or community, in the same way that as in the last 7 years I've been here, when someone presents a compelling reason to have a strategically located bus stop, we add it. And so I don't know, I mean, we're always going to be able to do that. So I don't know why we're putting that as a part of that when the goal of this special permit is to get people to this facility in if there's a secure way to do that. So I hear what you're saying, but
Mayor, can I add one last thing? I think City Manager Ford, I appreciated you mentioning like whose voices are we not hearing right now? We're not hearing the voices of Waco Transit, but we also are not hearing the voices of the people who this is created to serve. And we know that we have a massive lack of affordable housing in Waco. And I plan to talk about this in much more depth this evening, but I think it is crucial that this is providing a service that Waco desperately needs. And it's providing day shelter, and it's providing best-in-class wraparound case management. And we know that that is how people exit homelessness, and that's how people operate and move into financial security. And for that piece of this equation, I'm really excited and I'm really hopeful for the work that y'all are doing, because Waco needs that. And when our most vulnerable neighbors are well taken care of, our entire community benefits from that, and there's strength there. So while I appreciate hearing from the voices of homeowners and business owners that are important stakeholders, they're not the only stakeholders in this equation. And since we haven't mentioned anything about our actual residents experiencing homelessness, I at least wanted to name that they are a crucial piece in this puzzle that is worth recognizing and honoring and creating space for.
Totally.
Kelly, I disagree there. I believe the Salvation Army is their voice, and what they're proposing here is their voice. I assume that. So I disagree with you saying that they're not hearing, that we're not hearing them. The Salvation Army is their voice.
If I may, I think Councilmember Palmer was saying that, wasn't saying that we weren't hearing them.
Well, I mean, to some extent, we're not. I mean, as a social service professional myself, I don't intend to be the voice of somebody else. I intend to amplify it or to pass the microphone. And because we don't see someone in this room right now that is saying, I'm a resident experiencing homelessness and this is a need, I would say we're not hearing their voice in that way, though Salvation Army is stewarding that with intention and is trying to do the best with the information they have. But
I definitely want to ensure that our residents experiencing homelessness have access to good services in this community and have a voice. But on this specific item, I can't imagine why they would rather be having to walk from the bus stop that was proposed by Mr. Peters around the facility into the front, when we might explore doing something on site, which both should be more direct access to the residents experiencing homelessness, seeking access to the services provided by Salvation Army, and meet a concern of homeowners across the street. And so from my vantage point, that's all I'm saying on that particular bullet point.
Yeah, and I think the reason why we worded it this way, one was the input that we did get from the LaSalle Avenue group is they did want the bus stop to access off of 12th Street and not LaSalle. And then because it is a condition in here, it will be the responsibility of Salvation Army to build the facilities that are needed for the bus stop. And that would be either, adjacent to the street or pull in, however that ends up working out. But having that condition in here, that makes it the responsibility of Salvation Army and not Waco Transit to build those additional facilities that are going to be needed.
Okay. Thank you.
Any more questions on that one? All right, we'll jump to our next one, 161. This is a rezone request from C2 to C4 on in the 700 block of both 5th Street and 6th Street. This is a little over 2.5 acres that's adjacent to Torchy's Tacos and across from the post office property and the new strip center there where you have CVS and a lot of the fast food places there. This is in our mixed-use core land use designation, which again encourages higher density, walkable, urban-style development in that area. And then you can see a mix of the C2 zoning. You have seen some properties along that corridor start to transition to C4, adjacent property there where the Belmont apartments are located. The difference between C2 and C4, C4 is our downtown overlay, or downtown zoning district that is more in line with urban scale development. This property is also in our downtown overlay. There's a section of both 4th and 5th from downtown that connects to I-35 to encourage that type of urban scale development to connect to Baylor University. So here's the property. This is looking at it. You can see a lot of the work that's happening along 5th Street with the city's project there. This would be Torchy's Taco over here. You can see some of the commercial development along 6th Street. And then this is looking back from 6th Street at the 5th Street. And then this is looking back towards the interstate and then back towards downtown. So I would just point out that the Belmont Apartments developed under that C4 zoning, and you can see how the building's pushed up to the sidewalk. All the parking's behind the development. It's hard to see, but there's a streetscape there that's consistent with our downtown streetscape with the lighting and the trees and the wide sidewalk. And so the developer would like to do something consistent with that more urban scale development on this property, similar to this here. Plan Commission did recommend approval of this. We did not get any feedback from the noticing or the public hearing. The next public hearing is a zoning request from R1B to R2 at 3501 Ethel Avenue. This is a single-family property in the Heart of Texas Neighborhood Association at 35th and Ethel, between Bosque and Colcord. A little closer up view of it. The area is mainly made up of single-family residences. There are some vacant lots in there and a couple of churches. This is the urban residential land use designation. You do have some medium density across the street, and then the zoning where the yellow is mostly single-family, but you do have some R2 across the street and kind of scattered out through that area. This is a unique property. You can see this is the corner lot here. It's an old commercial building that's been vacant for probably over a decade. It's a non-conforming building, commercial building and residential zoning. So the owner is requesting the R2 zoning so they could develop it for something other than single family. And so the difference between R1B and R2 zoning is R2 does allow duplex, so the owner could divide this up into 2 units. It also allows short-term rental, which the existing R1B zoning does not. The Plan Commission did recommend approval on this one. Staff had recommended disapproval just because of the concern of introducing R2. Even though there's R2 across the street, it is more of a single-family neighborhood, and it would be introducing R2 zoning on that north side of Ethel. But there was no opposition to it, and I think Plan Commission felt with the uniqueness of that building being there and somewhat difficulties of using that for single family, that the R2 provided some opportunities for that building or that site that made sense for them in this case. So they did recommend approval of the zone change.
And we saw something like this on a strip in Washington where there were single-family residences, but they weren't zoned for single-family residences. Is that because essentially the zoning came after the structures? The zoning map was kind of laid over existing functions, or, why was this zoned R1B to begin with?
So I think this one, that's correct. The building was there before the zoning was there. On some of the situations where you have commercial zoning and then you have residential uses in that, it was because of the change in the zoning. Back in the mid-'80s, we changed how our zoning works, and you used to could do all the way from single family up to commercial and commercial districts, and we went away from that in the mid-'80s. So, but I think this situation is opposite. I think that building was there before the zoning was there.
So wasn't it operating as a barber shop or something like that?
I believe so, but the last use was a barber shop.
This is a tough one, I can see where you originally wanted to keep it as R1, but the intent, I guess, is to create more housing there too, I guess. It's, did you pivot on I'm trying to think, what was the element that had staff disapprove? Just because, I guess on the map, you can see it kind of sticks out a little bit into the yellow.
I think our biggest reason for recommending disapproval is just because of the information we got from the housing study and making it consistent. It is mainly single family development in that area, and just to be consistent with that, you do have R2 zoning right across the street, but it would be kind of the first property rezoned on the north side of that. So that was our reasoning behind that.
Okay.
Clint, did you say it's occupied now or it's not
It's
occupied?
been vacant for quite a time. He's just using it for some personal storage right now.
Okay.
All right, the next public hearing, 163, is a request to rezone from C5 to O2. This is at 2036 2040 South 12th Street. This is actually fairly close to the Salvation Army public hearing. This is up on 12th Street north of LaSalle. This is an area that has been transitioning away from more service, commercial, and industrial type development to residential development. You can see this is a mixed-use flex, which allows a mix of commercial and office and residential uses. And then zoning, the C5 zoning is a heavy commercial zoning that's actually not in line with the comprehensive plan or the purpose and intent of the LaSalle Avenue corridor. So this change, O2, is consistent with the LaSalle Avenue plan and consistent with other rezonings. This whole block used to be C5 and was recently, in the last 5 years, rezoned to O2 and developed for residential development. Here is the picture of the building. It's in that fenced off area right now. It's been a commercial use in the past, and you can see new residential development kind of around it. Looking back to LaSalle and then looking up 12th Street where you have more residential. No opposition on this one, and Plan Commission did recommend approval of it as well. The next public hearing is out on the 2301 West Loop 340. This is at the corner of Bagby and Corporation Drive. You got Legends Crossing here and the Hillcrest Hospital. You have the Central United Methodist Church that currently owns this property and has it under contract to sell to a commercial developer, and then right across from where the new Amazon facility is. It is medium density office flex. They are requesting to change that to office industrial flex. And then it's currently zoned O1 office zoning, and they're asking for C2, which is a mixed use commercial zoning. And being at that major intersection of Corporation and Bagby, it makes sense to rezone it to that C2. No feedback on the public hearing on that one, and the Plan Commission did recommend approval of it. And then 165 is two properties, 315 and 319 Lottie Street. This was the original application was from Jasmine Garcia, who owns 315, and the city expanded it to include a lot that the city owns at 319 Lottie, which is right next door. This is a change from C3, which is commercial zoning, to R2, which is residential. This is in the Northeast Riverside Neighborhood Association in District 1. You can see the two lots here. They're vacant lots. Looking up a little bit closer, you can see it's in a residential area. The zoning on it is all R2 zoning around it, except for this little piece where it's commercial. And so we are recommending that these two properties be zoned to R2 to fit in with the other residential properties around it. And then here's pictures of those. No opposition on this one, and Plan Commission recommended approval of it as well. And then our last public hearing is an abandonment request. This is on a portion of Mary Avenue right-of-way between 23rd Street and 26th Street. Going here. This is actually a portion of Mary Avenue that's unbuilt. That right-of-way through there is 100 feet wide, and they're requesting 25 feet adjacent to this property that the applicant has recently purchased with the intent of building a new sports complex for the Live Oak Classical School there. You can see here, this is what the proposal was, and that property doesn't have a lot of depth along there, so that extra 25 feet will give them some more room to help with accommodate their sports facility along Mary Avenue and 26th Street. And then there's a picture of it. And so what what that does, this came back several months ago, and we got some feedback from the owners across on the north side of Mary about them potentially wanting to abandon their portion of it. They had originally requested 50 feet of that right-of-way abandoned and reduced it down to 25 feet. So what that allows is the properties on the north side to request their portion 25 feet to be abandoned, and that would leave the city with a 50-foot right-of-way through there to accommodate, any future street extensions through there, hike and bike trails. Encore potentially is going to have some needs to put transmission lines down there, so that leaves enough space for public right-of-way while allowing some of those properties adjacent to it to pick up a little bit more land for development purposes.
Clint, how far is this from Floyd Casey Stadium?
So this is at 26th Street.
Yeah.
It's probably half a mile. And you can start seeing a little bit of the city's property where the track is just right off the map here.
Okay, I just didn't want any conflict with what we are proposing for Floyd Casey and this area as well. So it wouldn't conflict with each other.
No, ma'am, and then leaving that 50-foot right-of-way allows for any future public needs for that area right through there.
Okay. Thank you.
Staff and Plan Commission recommended approval. We do have 2 conditions on there, or 1 condition dealing with utility easements be retained or relocated at developer's expense. And that's the end of my presentation.
Thanks, Clint. And I think our next work session is work session 2022-152.
That is correct, Mayor.
And for anyone keeping score, we're about 30 minutes behind on the tentative time that we've mapped out, but we'll catch up.
It'll be all right. It's a big agenda, lots of good stuff on it. So work session 152 is a discussion of the Pavilion Project, the Brazos Riverfront, which is also known as the Brazos Promenade Project, and development of land adjacent to these 2 projects, including the agreements for these projects and an update on the progress of the Brazos Promenade. And I think many might recall my introduction of this project just a couple short weeks ago when I kind of dramatized the work of our city staff and the many challenges they've faced and gotten over. And you'll recall I used the Apollo 13 mission as that historical reference. Well, today I have a different reference because I'm just really excited about this presentation. And so I'm going to kind of summarize my thoughts heading into this presentation using the words of a popular 1982 hit song by the Pointer Sisters.
Oh boy.
In 1982, the reference, the tie-in, Jennifer, to 1982, of course, is when the Tiff was founded. Remember? So this was a hit song in 1982, the same year that we founded the Tiff. And back to the song, it says, "I am so excited, and I just can't hide it. I'm about to lose control, and I think I like it." And later in the song, I know that City Attorney Ritchie and Assistant City Manager Kane are going to provide such a thorough review of this agenda item related to the Foster Pavilion. And after they're done, we'll actually have team members from Catalyst Urban. Paris and Reese will join us for a few minutes at the table to give an update on the progress of construction in Phase 1 of the project. So Paul and Jennifer, take it away.
Thank you, Casey Kasem. Thank you, Bradley. Really appreciate that. And Mayor and Council, we are pleased to be able to spend some time with you this afternoon walking through some of the items that are on the agenda. Really culminates a lot of work from a lot of different people. I'm pleased to be having City Attorney Ritchie joining me at the table today, and certainly want to thank her for her invaluable representation of the city in drafting 9 agreements that made all this happen. So thank Jennifer for that, and also want to thank both Baylor and Catalyst Urban and their teams for working under some pretty tight timelines to get those agreements drafted. So we are pleased to walk you through what's on the agenda today. Today's discussion, there are 5 items that are on the agenda related to this project. And those, you see those listed there, and after we get through going through those today, then Catalyst Urban will make a couple of, make a presentation to the council and give you an update on where they are with phase 1 as well as future phases. All right, so the first item is the public hearing 2022-156 that deals with the change in parkland use. Chapter 26 of the Texas Park and Wildlife Code requires the city to have a public hearing to discuss and take public input regarding changes in use for the parkland. You see a couple of areas there shown. The area in light yellow is Area 1, a little over 1.7 acres, and that's the area on which a portion of Foster Pavilion will sit. And then there are Area 2 is 2.6 acres that will be for restaurant and entertainment uses and also parking roadways. From staff's perspective, we believe that these will enhance the recreational opportunities for Wacoans and facilitate reconstruction and improvements of the Riverwalk located there along the Brazos. There are a couple of findings that council will be asked to make. That one, that there's no feasible improvement alternative to the use of the land, and that the project includes planning to minimize harm to the parkland in the future. The next item is...
One quick question on that, homes over here. There's still parkland left, though. We're deeding some over. I just want to make it sound like, hey, all the parkland's going away. This is only a small part, and there'll be a lot of riverfront access for folks. Okay.
Yes, sir, that's correct. All right. The next item is the Tiff ordinance. Council approved this ordinance on first reading at the March 1st meeting, as you'll recall. And this ordinance extends the life of the Tiff until the end of 2052. Updates the project plan for the city projects, Baylor projects, and the Catalyst work as well, and it authorizes projects pursuant to Chapter 380. So this is the second and final reading of that ordinance that's been previously approved. All right, next I want to walk through the Baylor Agreements. There are 4 agreements. These are all included in a single agenda item, Resolution 2022-171, and it includes these 4 agreements you see listed here. The Master Development Agreement, which is the umbrella agreement for everything. Lease Agreement for the property that I just talked about, real estate purchase and sale, and the TIF Agreement. So we'll go through each one of those briefly here. Again, the MDA is that umbrella document, and wanted to give you just a quick overview of Baylor's obligations. These are all refreshers from what we discussed on the March 1st meeting. They, of course, will construct the pavilion at the site. There'll be 10 university events in the plaza, in the pavilion or on the plaza, 25 community events per year, and then 5 performances, might think musicians, magicians, those kinds of professional entertainment at the site over a 2-year period. They will be contributing $25,000 in matching funds for a marketing plan for the pavilion, of which the city and some other partners in the community will participate in that. They will support the Performing Arts Facility with a donation of $10 million, $1 million per year over 10 years, and they will have proportional use of the Performing Arts Facility based on that contribution as a percent of the overall cost. Baylor will acquire just under 8 acres of riverfront property and make a contribution to the STEAM Academy in East Waco of $500,000. From the city side of things, the city will provide Baylor an $18.8 million site selection incentive, acquire just under 5 acres of the 7.8 acres at a cost of $15.2 million. Lease to Baylor approximately 1.74 acres of the Brazos Common Parkland, construct 435 parking spaces, of which they will have use during the weekdays, 200 of those spaces for the Clifton Robinson Tower employees, and all 600 spaces on game day, both with this garage and the garage across the street. The city will create a municipal parking authority, and we will be improving the Riverwalk. There's also a provision in the Master Development Agreement, also in the Lease Agreement, that there is a suspension or remedy period for the leased parcel, which is called a river parcel in the leases, dealing with certain contingencies that could arise. There's That property has long sat dormant and has a lot of history there, and there's some concern about historical, archaeological, or environmental issues that could arise there. In the event something like that is discovered and it causes a delay in construction, there's a 30-day suspension built into the agreements, and then a remedy period of 90 days from there. So again, we're excited to bring these things forward to you, and we think it provides opportunities to address issues that the different parties may have had moving forward. The Baylor Lease Agreement, you see in this map here, all of the light colored blue shaded properties are already owned by the city. That gets back to Councilmember Holmes' question earlier about parkland. All of this area is owned by the city already. This area in olive shade here is the portion of the parkland that would be leased to Baylor. You see the pavilion footprint shown in green here that would sit on top of it. So there'll be a long-term lease agreement, 80 years with an option for 19 additional years. There's a ground lease there. On the real estate purchase side, there's an agreement that deals with that. There are 4 different, we'll call them parcels, for purchase by the city after Baylor acquires them from the private owners. 4.87 acres, 15.2 million with 300 at closing, and then payments of 2.9 million beginning in May of 2024. The closing is on or before June 30th of this year, and we do have $250,000 in closing costs there. And I know some of you are active in real estate probably think that's a whole lot of money for closing costs, and it is. We anticipate probably about half of that will actually be needed, but we wanted to have a big enough buffer in here. There's a chance that Baylor's closing of the private purchase and our closing with Baylor could occur on the same day in a simultaneous kind of close. So we want to make sure that if that occurs on the 30th, that we're not in a situation where we don't have enough money to pay for closing costs. So you see those 4 parcels there at the corner of Franklin and New Parks here up at the top. There's one parcel, the parcel here at the northwest corner of Clay and University Parks. The Clay right-of-way is the 3rd, and then the 4th parcel that sits in what we would call the parking garage / hotel parcel here, number 4. Baylor will purchase all of the property in red. They will retain this piece that you see here that does not have the hash marks on it.
Paul, I want to make one comment on that slide, if you go back. What makes this attractive to me, obviously in the context of this whole deal, the track number 1 up there, if you go right behind it, that is also owned by the city.
Yes, sir, it is.
And we're the only one that I think that would make logical use out of that collective both tracks. So in addition to 2 and 3 are right next to city-owned parkland, as you said. So I just wanted to point that out, that land behind 1 is already owned by this Waco.
Yes, sir. It's a great point, great highlight there. And of course, all of this acquisition by the city helps us to further develop the riverfront corridor. And so we're excited to have an opportunity to expand that development. All right, the next agreement with Baylor is the Baylor Tiff agreement. These are agreements that council's certainly seen with other developments in the past. Again, $18.8 million site selection incentive paid in 5 annual installments, and those will begin in May of 2024. Includes the event and facility uses that we talked about earlier, the STEAM Center contribution, performing arts facility support. Baylor would commence the project no later than July 1st and complete July 31st, 2024. And I believe, as we discussed on the March 1st meeting, that Baylor does anticipate trying to open a portion of the pavilion for play for basketball games on January 1st of 2024, with the remainder of the facility to be completed by mid to late summer of 2024. Next, we have a series of agreements with Catalyst Urban. The city has an existing relationship with Catalyst Urban for multiple phases of the downtown riverfront property. So we're doing a couple of things where, with regard to the existing agreements that we have with them, we're amending the master development agreement and executing a lease for parcel 3 in that current agreement that we have with them. as properties come available for development, then the lease for each of those parcels happens at that point in time. So this is consistent with that overall agreement. And then we have another not very creative description here called a new project, which is that northwest corner of Clay and U Parks. So we've got the master development agreement for that specific parcel, lease agreement for that parcel, and then a TIF agreement concerning that parcel. So we'll go through each one of those quickly as well. First item with regard to the master development agreement, we have some amendments to that I'll highlight here. The red area is the newly configured area for phase 1 development. That's the work that's underway today. You see that outlined in red and in red shade. The existing agreement called for that to begin in April of 20 to end in April of 23. Those dates remain intact. The area is somewhat revised here. Before we had gone all the way from 35 over to Franklin. We're pausing that with regard to Catalyst Urban's work, and the city will pick that up as we move forward with some engineering studies related to parking and handling of events at the building. Phase 2, which is this parcel here, and let me highlight that in the existing agreement, the phases don't necessarily happen in sequence. They can change and be taken at different time frames. So we'll call this phase 2, as it's called in the agreement. That property, that parcel was scheduled for development to begin in April of 23 and end in April of 26. We bumped that out to January of 25 and January of 28, really for one major reason. This phase 2 was originally planned to be a hotel site in the existing MDA that we have with Catalyst. As council is aware, this site here that we're acquiring from Baylor is a combination of hotel and parking garage. And with 2 hotels in close proximity here, there was some thought that perhaps this use at phase 2 might change to an office use or some other type of use. So we've built in the ability in the agreement to switch this over to a different use from hotel, and not knowing fully yet the path forward on the hotel and having that defined in an agreement form, we've added time to that construction, and you see this window here for phase 2. On phase 3, which is the restaurant parcel here, originally in the initial concepts, this was, I believe, one restaurant with some retail or outdoor theater kinds of things. In the revision, phase 3 now has 2 restaurants you see, kind of in an angle here and an angle here. That work would begin, again, we've changed a little bit of the dates here, moving forward about 3 months to July of 23 and completion in July of 26. And those start dates are pending the filing of a CLOMR, a letter of map revision with FEMA that is necessary to move forward with construction of the Riverwalk here. We anticipate that we will reset the grade for the Riverwalk and get it out of the floodway and floodplain. And so that as that work occurs, then that new grade or new elevation of the new Riverwalk will have to tie into the work that is happening with phase 3. So there's a tight relationship between those 2 things there. The lease agreement is just, again, with this phase 3 parcel to begin that lease as part of the overall master development agreement. The new project is, again, this parcel here at the northwest corner of Clay. And you can see here it has parking garage, some residential, and about 10,000 feet at ground level of retail restaurant and a smaller restaurant in the back corner. So related to this specific parcel, again, master development agreement outlines the responsibilities from Catalyst's perspective, construction of a multi-use building of at least $25 million in value. Again, the retail you see I mentioned earlier, 100 multifamily residential units with the courtyard amenities, the parking garage, of which the city will purchase 165 spaces. The development will be zoned to a planned unit development, and the council will have approval of that planned unit development as well as what we've called schematics and specifications within the document, and that has to do with the quality, type, and character of the development, addressing, and will include such things as the renderings, the design elements, the site plan, construction materials, and those kinds of things. So council will have a look at those things and ultimately approve those as we move forward. Timelines on this particular phase: the garage will commence after council's approval of the PUD and the schematics. We expect that to be in January 23, with them beginning the work in February. Again, the completion of 1/1/24, trying to meet Baylor's timeline for opening of the facility. And then the remainder, the retail, restaurant, and multifamily, a little bit behind as it wraps the garage and the development. And Paris and the team will talk about that in much greater detail. From the city's perspective, we're of course going to ground lease the property to them, purchase 165 parking spaces at that $4.6 million, and then we'll have a pilot program for affordable housing, something we talked about earlier last meeting. First time we've ever used TIF funds to try to use as a tool to provide for affordable housing. Not a lot of units here, a pilot program just to get us started and to evaluate how it works. This is the lease area, again, right there on the corner, Clay and University Parks. Same terms, 80 years with a 19-year renewal. And then the new project has a TIF agreement as well. Of course, execution of the ground lease is an element there. Catalyst will construct the mixed-use building. We'll get the PUD and schematic plans and specs approved by the council. We will then buy the parking spaces upon completion and work with Catalyst on the affordable housing element. The last item on the agenda today is Resolution 2022-173, which is approving the TIF funds for specific projects that the city will undertake. One is the Kinley Horn Downtown Implementation Plan that's been underway since December, and that will reimburse the city for that expense. The Quiet Zone project is underway, a lot of different elements there. The last report to council was about $5.1 million total, so we're adding some additional funding for that. The Riverwalk improvements that we've talked about, we are designing them from Franklin all the way to the law school at Baylor, and we anticipate that we'll probably have to take construction in phases, perhaps Clay to Baylor, and so that's money that's going to be provided to the city by the TIF to construct those improvements. The construction of the parking garage is the city's responsibility. The northeast corner of Clay and University Parks, that's the same garage that will relate to and house the hotel development that's going to occur on that corner. And then the last, some traffic signals and roadway improvement dollars for Clay and University Parks as we move forward with those plans. So that summarizes where we are today. Jennifer and I are here to answer any specific questions that you may have.
Mayor and Council, if I may, before y'all ask questions, I wanted to say a couple things. I know Bradley and Paul have given some thanks to our community partners, but I wanted to mention a couple other names and emphasize those. I wanted to, of course, thank y'all for your leadership, the TIF board, and of course Bradley on this. Also, I wanted to thank our outside counsel. We couldn't have done this without the help of Kelly Hart and Hallman and Bracewell. And then, of course, Paul did mention Baylor and Catalyst, but I also wanted to mention their inside and outside attorneys who worked as hard as our attorneys on this, and frankly, maybe got mad at us a couple times during this, at the speed with which we're going. And as much as I know he will hate me shining any light on him, I just want to thank Paul Kane. His leadership, hard work, responsiveness, problem solving, organization, and creativity made a really challenging project as easy it could be for me and the legal staff. I truly enjoyed working with him, and I cannot tell you how this project would not have happened without him. And so I just wanted to publicly thank him, even though I know he hates it. So, and I know he got scared when I grabbed the microphone, but I hope it's less scary now.
Well, thank you, Jennifer, for that. That's very kind. I thought you were going to sing some Pointer Sisters songs or something.
Would be appropriate.
Thanks, seriously, thank you, Jennifer, for that. Questions from council on this?
I'll just start here. Very supportive of this and appreciate all the work, Paul, that you did and Jennifer that you did, and Bradley, and all of staff. I know you've got good help on pushing this forward. It's unprecedented, right, in the history of Waco, where we've worked this closely for this big of a project, and have this kind of commitment. The way it's a big, $73 million, but I think if you break it down, the way I've broken it down is in really 4 parts. One of them is parking, and I think we're getting 600 spaces for 18 million, and I think that's a need that all Wacoans have said, you know, there's not a place to park downtown now, which is a great problem to have versus 5-10 years ago. But on game day, people are concerned that there are parking spaces, so this is going to be a fundamental part of changing the face of downtown. The second part to me is the 21 million that we're committing for riverfront improvement. And to me, this is long overdue, and we've not really had a Riverwalk that we can all be proud of and just say, hey, this is a super, super place for people to go as they drive by on I-35, as we visit it, as Waco citizens, as Baylor kids walk through there, as all folks are going to be proud of this Riverwalk when we're done. That's $21 million, and I think it's long overdue, and will be very complimentary to the entire area in downtown Waco. The current Riverwalk is pretty plain. When you get down to there, it's just kind of concrete and a wall, and I think what we do in this phase is going to make everybody proud of that area. And let's finish the job here. Let's not just have the basketball stadium. Let's make it a beautiful area. That's 21 million, which also includes the not just the Riverwalk improvement, but the quiet zone and a couple other items. They're fixing up the university parks a little bit, the traffic signals. So it's a thoughtful amount that we're putting in there. The third part, 15 million, is buying the land to make this work. And what I liked about it and pointed out a little bit earlier, we've got most things concentrated in there next to the pavilion, but this also allows us to buy the tract 1 or whatever that one is, the food truck lot, as we always used to call it, which connects to another like-sized tract that the city has. So I think we can make some good use out of that for the community and for the citizens too. And then the remainder, the 19 million to Baylor, kind of indirect. We say it's to Baylor, but it's really to make this basketball pavilion sort of a more public arena and a more public venue, which we intended to spend a lot more than that on the initial phase of this thing to make the pavilion more than a basketball court. So I think, and Baylor's commitment, I very much appreciate it, that we'll have more events there. Basketball is going to be a lot. It's going to be great. Men's, women's basketball. We have championship teams that we can go watch in a very beautiful place in a nice part of town. Community events and the performances that we're talking about, unprecedented for Waco. Plugged into downtown, this whole deal is transformational, and I'm very excited, if I may sing the second chorus of the Pointer Sisters song, excited about this whole project. Parrish, are you gonna speak to? So I'll wait on that.
There's gonna be more in a minute.
I'll wait on that. We're laying some more responsibility on you here too, but anybody who's driven down University Parks lately has kind of seen all the work going on and peeking down Webster to see kind of what that's gonna look like. But I'll wait for my comments on the catalyst stuff until you have a chance to talk, Paris. But Paul, Jennifer, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Can y'all hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay. So thanks, Paul. Thanks, Jennifer, for your presentation. I am, absolutely, this is, I know, far more complicated than anyone could ever imagine. And I appreciate you all and your dedication to seeing this through. I will say again, I have concerns about the number of what we're doing for our affordable units. I know that if I remember correctly from last council in the work session with the TERS board, that was when at the number that we got to, that was the number that we could do. I want to see what stretching looks like, because 3 units out of 100, it's inconsequential to what our needs are. And, I need for us to get to, and I understand that this is a pilot program. Sometimes pilots have to mash the gas and go real fast. because I think we need to at least set a precedent of a percentage. I think the minimum our percentage should be is 10%. So I'm here for it. I want this to be successful. I want us to succeed. I want us to advance. This is will be a jewel in the crown of Waco and can finally get a decades-long development project to a close. But I think that we can't just say in one voice and have done this complete and incredibly detailed housing study and not do. I know we can't fix it all at one time, but I think we need to set a precedent of what that looks like and some consistency. But thank you for everything.
First question, who's Casey Kasem? I know who he is. I'm not that young.
We're showing our age here.
Wow.
We got a baby up here.
He came after Wolfman Jack.
AM radio.
Very good. I want to start. This is really exciting stuff. A couple of quick comments on my end. I understand the tabling of University Parks from I-35 to Franklin because it's going to be such a construction zone with heavy equipment, kind of on the gateway into the pavilion. But my hope is that we can really work to time the completion of that as best as possible and be really thoughtful about the timing of that. I haven't seen any timing on when we anticipate that, but my hope is that we'll be in close coordination with all parties to make sure that we're being thoughtful about when that gets wrapped up and that it really does have an aesthetic to match the development as we go. So looking forward to seeing that through. And Paul and Bradley and Jennifer have heard me say this. I don't love the pushing of the phase 2 to 2028, but after having had conversations with Catalyst, my belief is that they will be working to work with us to try to really try to bring some information to us soon on where they're headed with this, and that if they can get it done sooner than that, we'll do that. But all things considered, I'm excited for this to move forward and just hope that we can do it as quickly as possible. And so even though I don't like the delay, I understand that complicated and generational developments that are done right take time, and that is what this is going to be. I'm also committed, a couple of things that got brought up that I just want to echo my commitment to is the parking concerns that Councilmember Holmes brought up. I share, making sure that as we go, that we're being thoughtful about this, transportation and wayfinding and pedestrian access, like that is going to be important as we go with this. So look forward to continuing to shape that out as this development builds. And then also our commitment to public housing. It just as Andrea mentioned, the need for seeing concrete steps taken on this subject matter in future conversations is just highlighted by her comments. So really look forward to us really building out good policies and procedures around that in the days to come. I'll just conclude with a thankfulness to staff. Man, what a journey this has been. I know y'all feel like y'all have been running a marathon, and this is the home stretch. So really, really, really thankful for the hard work that you guys have done. I feel like there's literal blood, sweat, and tears that has come from this, but it's a real triumph. And I just, my hope is that in the same way that all Wacoans will get to drive down the interstate and see this sterling, beautiful development for generations to come, you will as well, and be able to know that we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Jennifer Ritchie and Paul Kane and Bradley Ford and the rest of our incredible City of Waco staff. So I hope you carry this legacy with you as you go and know that what you're doing matters to this community. It has been, for generations now, folks in Waco have been calling for the river to be developed and this beautiful asset that we have in our downtown to be revitalized and utilized in a way that really creates this beautiful development. And so I'm really thankful that I get to play this small part with this council and this staff to see that dream that so many people have had come to reality. I mean, I echo what Councilmember Bearfield said, that this will be a jewel in the crown of Waco. So thanks to everybody's hard work on this, and look forward to seeing us move forward on it.
Thank you, Mayor, for those kind words, and really want to thank the council for your support and for your vision for something like this. It's a big project, but it's going to be huge for Waco, and thank you for that. And also, I want to thank Bradley for his vision and leadership on this. And one of the things I found a long time ago, had an old coach used to say, everybody do your job, right? Mm-hmm. Do your job. And it helps to work for somebody that lays out their vision and it says, hey, everybody do your job and we'll get this thing done. And Bradley did that. So thank you all. And at this point, I believe, Mayor, we'll have the Catalyst team come up and give you an update on the project and their future plans.
Great. Welcome, sirs.
Welcome, Mayor and council members. Nice to be here. Nice to be a part of this exciting day and process, and part of this evolution, Mayor, that you spoke of, which we are wholeheartedly behind and have been excited about since day one. So we appreciate that. As mentioned, I'd like to give an update as to where things are out on the first phase, and then talk a little bit about the next phase that Jennifer mentioned and that Paul went through as well. So, of course, as you recall, there's two aspects to that phase in our collective partnership. There's the off-site infrastructure work, and Paul covered some of the scope changes based on the construction requirements that the pavilion will be bringing to the area. And then there's the on-site, or the private buildings that are moving along. And then I'll be talking about the same for the next phase. So let's talk about the public infrastructure first. So you may recall this graphic shows just what that public infrastructure was. It was University Park from Franklin to 35. It was Webster from the river down to 2nd. It was the park itself, and then some ancillary streets that kind of bind the park, as well as the private development. So the kind of crowning jewel, if you want to use that term, or the big challenge, to use another term, that runs down the middle of Webster, which you may have seen, and we affectionately referred to it as the Grand Canyon. It was a 9x9 storm line that served a major portion of downtown, and will serve a major portion of downtown, that drains this area into the river. And those 9x9 boxes, they're big enough to drive a car through. They're pretty remarkable. They're about 38,000 pounds each, and I think we had over 200 of them. All of those are in the ground. There was a trench, which you probably saw, that was about 80 feet by 30 feet deep, to lay each one of those boxes. In the midst of alluvial plain soils and water. When you look at the lake or the river, that water line actually comes all the way down into University Park's area. So you can imagine, and you can see one image along the way of what that is. Major undertaking, and it took longer than we anticipated to go through that process for a variety of reasons. And in doing so, that made it a little bit difficult to navigate on site and keep things on track. On site, as you can imagine, that's the principal artery that's in there. But the good news is all of those boxes are placed. The trench is primarily covered at this point. The river outfall structure, where the drainage goes into the river, is being poured actually as we speak. So that's nearing completion. Next steps in there will be the dam, the earthen dam that was built out in the river. That will be removed once the outfall structure is complete and in place. So we are very thankful that portion of the job is just about behind us. It was a massive undertaking at an extremely large scale. So along the way, while that was occurring, the prospect for the pavilion came to light. And in addition to moving the what used to be the Phase 4 property, we also had a large 54-inch sanitary line that went through the middle of what is now the pavilion site, hopefully now the pavilion site. So while we were under construction, we engaged our design team to reshuffle things and get that out of the way so it didn't cause a problem where the city would have to come in or Baylor would have to come in and rip out this almost equally large piece of infrastructure that was running through the middle of the site. So that got re-engineered to be a 15-inch line down the side of the big storm sewer I mentioned a second ago down Webster, and then reoriented that line, that 54-inch line, through University Park. So that's another reason why, Mayor, some of the streetscape on the eastern side of University Parks is being held off. It will be a very large canyon in there, and I think that has just been started actually over on the east side of the Robinson Tower. So you'll see that moving from east to west. But that's another reason why it made sense to back some of that off, just given the dynamic nature of this project. But the other good news here is all of the primary utilities are complete. That's a big undertaking and it's a big accomplishment. We've got curb gutter paving commencing as soon as some of the franchise utility work is completed. The large power pole that you may have seen where the crossing of the power lines used to be, those power lines are going to be running across to that large pole and then underground. All that conduit is primarily in place, and they'll be working in the near term to pull those cables so that this area of Webster doesn't have any overhead utility lines. So that's in process, and as soon as that's finished, the curb and gutter work will begin, and we'll be out of some of the dust that we've all been experiencing over the last year in this area. Meanwhile, with the opportunity that the pavilion affords, and frankly the property that comes with it, it's held the potential for the park itself to be reshaped to fit better with the pavilion. So we are in process with staff in working on that, actually right now. We've tried for quite a while to hold the contractor back a bit to make sure we weren't putting any improvements in place that would have to be ripped out and repaid for. We've been successful with that, but we're kind of right at the point now where that scope adjustment has now, it's been clarified, as you saw in Paul's presentation. So that's kind of where that's at. But the construction of the reconfigured park will be part of the full delivery of our Phase 1, which is by the second quarter of 2023. So we are full bore ahead on that with the redesign, and we'll be looking at all of that being done so we're not wasting or losing any time. So we want to see that finished just as quickly as I know you all do. I'll move on and we can come back to questions, which I imagine you probably do. So let's talk about the status of the on-site or the buildings. I mentioned a little bit about the canyon and making the on-site a little bit difficult to travel through. Well, this is that main spine of Webster. This is an exact rendering that shows exactly what the design is. And you can see kind of the variety of landscaping, street trees, parking, the buildings, outdoor dining, paving, pavers. All that is what is now coming in this current phase. I mentioned getting the curb and paving and gutter work moving. You see the building, that's what we call Building 1 at the northwest corner. The other buildings, of course, are across the street. And again, this is a good depiction of what you'll see here by the second quarter of next year. So there are some finishing points. One thing that's interesting about these projects, I've been doing this for 30 years, you have to get to the end of the project to be able to judge it in terms of what it looks like. It's not a big steel structure where you can be impressed by the frame as it's coming up and then be impressed by the cladding as it goes on the frame, which I think we all will be when the pavilion is underway. This is all about creating urbanism and the details that come around it, between building materials, but also the landscaping and the quality of the sidewalks, et cetera. It all kind of comes together with signage and artwork. So that's why I want to bring up finishing points. So the landscaping, and the pavers are all on track for this fall to be going in. We've got a series of special building features that are also on track. Those are the last things that get done after the materials on the buildings actually, are complete and installed. You may recall from the original design that we've got large signs. You see one of them here, but also in the park. Those are all done. They're in a warehouse waiting to be installed, as is the public artwork that was a part of the public process that we went through with the community, a while back. Those are done. They're awaiting installation. So we've got a lot of things here. We've identified all the trees. They're sitting in a nursery ready for installation. So we're kind of nearing that point where some of these fineries get put in place. We're finally at the place where the restaurants are being marketed now. We've engaged Weitzman, which is one of the largest real estate brokerage companies in the state, and they are actively involved. You'll be seeing their sign go up here in the next few days out front. Of course, once that occurs, we then form our own partnership with our restaurateur partners and looking at the tenant improvements on the restaurant spaces themselves. And you'll see signage and additional architecture and things come into those buildings as that happens. We're essentially delivering a shell, and then they come in with us and kind of customize out what that design will be. That process has now begun, and we've got a bunch of prospects identified, which is great. You can imagine with their investment coming in with us on the restaurants, there's a lot of talk about parking, street parking, the completion of the public infrastructure, the timing of that, the timing of the pavilion. You can imagine all those things are important. The timing of 35, all those things become important to them.
Hey, Paris, quick,
Yes, sir.
I don't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, sure.
This rendering is looking west down University Park. So
Yeah.
to the right is the river, right?
That's right. So this is, this is looking northwest, standing
Yeah,
at the
right.
intersection. The river is kind of straight down Webster,
Right.
straight in front of you. You'll see off in the distance, this rendering was created some time ago before we knew about the pavilion. This showed the hotel that we were planning in that location. Of course, that hotel is moved over to the pavilion area. But yeah, you're looking, the railroad tracks are off to the left.
Got it, thanks.
We can come back to this if, at the end if you want as well.
Okay.
So we'll talk for a moment about the context behind what we're all calling next phase, but it's all part of the riverfront development. So, again, going back to the original master plan of the core area and the buildings that are under construction, we had floodplain issues up on the north side, which Paul mentioned before. I think we have a creative solution to how to navigate that, to be able to get additional restaurants that works with the park itself. So we're working through that, but you can kind of see a depiction of where the buildings were there in gray. And what's notable is what's to the right in the aerial photograph. All that is open. With the pavilion coming in and that footprint that Paul was showing, there's parking needs, and then very importantly, on non-game days, there's the needs of what you see as you walk and drive down the street. And that's something that we're excited to be working with you all on if we have that opportunity. So that land brings in potential to evolve the plan. And, with the leadership of your staff and Baylor and working all together, we've arrived at a master plan that shows that evolution. And it's based on a couple key elements. One is to take clay and then bind the park on both sides with this street that takes you back over to Webster. So we now have a street grid that's not reliant only on the intersection of Webster and U Parks. That's a very important point because it allows you, from a wayfinding standpoint, to make your way through all these great things. So that's a key element of the plan. As is that then provided the city to look at what's down at water level. And make sure we don't continue to have some of the maintenance and operational issues that you all have had over the years when the water level comes up and silt goes across the walking surfaces. Well, in doing those things, it created the site for 3 more development areas for private development to come in and to get back on the tax roll. So those sites are shown there in blue. Obviously, the footprint of the pavilion in the upper right on that yellow property. And then importantly, one of the nice things of us all working together is in order to fit all the parking that's required in that garage for the pavilion and then private uses, we will actually be retrofitting our current phase and be allocating land in that current phase to fit the garage, so that the garage can be lined with uses that are pleasing to the eye and exciting to be able to use as you go down the sidewalk. So this is, the culmination of that is a plan that looks like this. And I know with the city's work with the Baylor team, there'll continue to be some small refinements and such along the water, but generally speaking, the plan looks like this, and it incorporates those items that I just went through before. You can see on the half block between Webster and Clay, which is the two kind of up and down streets, there's an additional mixed-use building that comes in with that gray parking garage that allows for that, a portion of those 600 spaces, Councilman Holmes, that you mentioned before. You can see the hotel building and its garage, obviously the pavilion building in that tan color. You see the expansion of the park is the kind of the centerpiece of it. And then what we consider to be jewel buildings out on the river that are restaurants that will be designed for high visibility and experience both from within the park but also from the highway. So we have a great lighting designer that we've engaged as part of that, so at daytime and nighttime, they'll look good. So that's what the last two slides here, I'll just focus on those, or two areas of slides, I'll focus on those two projects, which is what Paul just went through with you from a deal point standpoint. So the basic design concept is to expand what we started in the beginning, but ramp it up even more now that the pavilion's coming. And that's to work off of the architecture of the pavilion, is to work off the architecture of downtown, the historic nature of it, but also what's happening contemporary, from a contemporary standpoint with the excitement that's happening in downtown, and really play that up through quality materials. This project will be 100% brick, with also steel and glass elements that kind of articulate the ground level. And then, of course, restaurant buildings that will be gem buildings that stand out, that really are eye-catching for the restaurateurs to do their good thing with us, too. But have a lot of attention, as we always do at the ground level and the streetscape experience. We will continue to do that. We'll continue to have interesting signage. That's very important in places like this, has been our experience. And we'll have kind of creative retail storefronts that come with that. So the riverfront restaurants, you see some imagery. We've just engaged and are just engaging in design with our design team. But the thought here is that you have indoor and outdoor restaurant experiences at the waterfront. So you'll be able to be up above the water, looking at McLean Stadium, looking back at the Foster Pavilion, looking back at the park. You can have air conditioning or not, depending on your desire. And you can imagine the types of events that can go on in images like you see there on the left. These are intended to be kind of simple forms, so they're eye-catching, great lighting at night, and cool colors and materials and signage in the day that you can see. We've got two restaurants, as mentioned before. They share service. And one of the elements we've been talking with Weitzman about is just how the parking works. Rather than having a big parking lot out front, which you typically see, we're moving forward with the understanding that this is a destination. We've got parking on street, in the garage, and there'll be valet as well. So we're kind of pushing the envelope there to make sure that we're delivering physically something that's deserved of the site. In terms of the garage and the mixed-use building that lines that garage, here the thought is again to play off the architecture of the pavilion and also some of the imagery that we've seen from the proposals for the hotels, to kind of work off the history of the area, but also pull in some modern moments. So you see some of the photographs there is a combination of what I just described. And the design of the garage will have very high floor plates on the ground level that will be well lit. There'll be cool entrances as you come in. There'll be wayfinding that takes you off University Parks or River to take you into that garage. And then as you go down Clay, that building is all about providing kind of excitement to make your way north, but also provide a backdrop for the hotel building on the tower to really stand out. And that's how we're looking at it. The corner of Clay and University Parks, you see in the bottom image there is an idea of really working off what looks to be a series of buildings. Obviously ground level restaurant and retail space, again, cool lighting, but some historical tones taken from downtown, as well as some modern elements, which you see in some of the photographs. So this, what's important to us is make sure that we blend with the current architecture of our current phase, but also work with the architecture of the coming phases. That was always our plan, but the addition of the pavilion makes it, even better, frankly, given that the pavilion's using a lot of brick. So that's our update. I'm sure you've got some questions. I'd love to entertain those.
Questions, comments?
Holmes here, I'll just start. Thanks a lot, Paris, for this presentation. It's a good update. Particularly so many people are driving down to University Parks right now and just kind of peering into what's going on and seeing some, looks like we're getting there. And one thing everybody I know does is, like I say, peers down Webster to see what, the pictures here are very compelling. I love it. And having that feature as part of this overall site is going to be great. I like the fact that we're kind of, I guess this phase one, making the announcement today or whatever. I guess it's always been April 2023. So 1 year from now, this will all be complete. And I guess as this next year goes on, we'll just see accumulation. I'm glad to hear that all these signs are in a warehouse somewhere. We might need to just lay them out on the street so people can see, this is what it's going to look like in a few months. But very happy to see that we're keeping that there. And phase one also includes, as you said, the farmers market will be available to folks again. And again, I've got my computer on that riverfront lofts and that corner. It looks beautiful. I also agree that kind of switching around phase two and phase three, the original phase two, which was the hotel, and phase three, which was the restaurants. I think it makes a lot of sense to reverse those, and I appreciate your flexibility in pushing those around. This new project, which you've agreed to help on, also great. They'll give us more parking. That one starts also in February 2023. And as you said, and a lot of people don't understand the challenges, and myself also, a lot of this infrastructure is not just these buildings that you see, but the pictures that you showed early on, the underground stuff that we're doing, all the drainage, all the utilities that need to go in to make this happen. Because basically, when we started, this was, a Waco tornado dump site. Let's face it, there was nothing going on there. So it's so rewarding and exciting, again, Bradley, to see the catalyst work as a catalyst in this whole project with Baylor and the Foster family and taxpayers, and Tiff board and downtown businesses to make this all work. And again, I appreciate your commitment as one of the winning bidder on getting this going. I know this is kind of moved around a little bit, from when you started, and I think it's gotten better and better, and I like what we're seeing here. Let me make sure I'm not missing anything in my comments. I like the concept that you're coming back to with this brick stuff. I mean, and the fact that we'll have the look of it, that you're conscious of that, and how we kind of want it to be complementary to what the Foster family and what we're all trying to put together down there in that little area. And I think that will help this whole project in the long run, that we're conscious of what the look of it and the permanence of it. But man, I'll just close my comments by saying, you go back to that one slide, I forget your Riverfront District slide, and think that, 5 years ago, well, not that long ago, there wasn't anything there. There wasn't much there. I mean, Clifton, the Robinson Tower was there, and then we were kind of working back into the farmers market, but that was it. And then there was the fire tower, So this is so exciting, and I just can't. You got me saying it all the time now, Bradley. But it's fun to be part of this, and seeing the commitment of everybody, Baylor, Catalyst, the taxpayers, downtown businesses, and seeing it all come together. Looking forward to seeing phase one get finished up here in about a year.
Well, thank you. Phil mentioned one thing, and Paul underscored it. You know, we're long-term residents here with you. Obviously, we're in this for the long haul with you all. And so our relationship is important to us. That, you know, we will be coming back to you with the designs, as Paul mentioned. You know, we take your input seriously, obviously, because at the end of the day, this is a transitional moment for the city, and we take that responsibility seriously.
My comments, Mayor, are going to be a little different than my council members here, because I'm a Wacoan, born and bred here. We lived on University Parks Drive before urban renewal and before I-35. So looking at these pictures and seeing the names of the streets brought back a lot of memories to me. A lot of Hispanic families lived in that area during the tornado, and so all this brought back a lot of memories. We used to go down this way to go to church, St. Francis, and then there was a dance pavilion that we would all go to on Saturdays on North 2nd. So we would use this drive to go to these places, but I'm looking at it and it's reminding me of all the families that lived in that area, and then it was nothing. So now we can look at this and say, wow, they moved us out and we scattered all over the city of Waco during urban renewal, and now we can look back and say where we used to live is a beautiful place now. So I'm excited to see this going up, but like I said, it brings back a lot of memories to me, and I'm sure a lot of other folks in the community, and they're all going to be so proud of what's going on, and that this is going to be a beautiful place, an asset and a jewel to the city of Waco. So like I said, my comments are just a little bit different, but I'm excited. I'm excited about this.
Councilmember Rodriguez, well, I guess this is a more staff and or Paris question. I mean, I'm sure somewhere there would be an opportunity to perhaps pay some homage to the folks that, you know, invested in that part of U Parks, and second was home. I think that, you know, a lot of time in development and design, we do nods to our history. And I think that, you know, without, you know, escaping the beautiful design that we're presented with now, I still think there are ways to wink at history and honor. So, I mean, if that's something that, you know, I'm not trying to throw a monkey wrench in the program, but I think it would be an awesome opportunity for us.
That's right in the middle of, I know you've heard this phrase, Sandtown. That was our community, Sandtown. So this is, this is right in the middle of our community of Sandtown.
Right.
So there's a lot of folks still here that used to live there. Maybe I could talk to them and see what we can come up with.
Sure. I think
Thank you, member.
I appreciate council's thoughts there, great points. I think we can put together the right group and the right resources and materials, and provide those to Catalyst and let them sit down with their design team and see what they can come up with in terms of ways to acknowledge the history of this area within the development. And I think that's a great point, and we're excited to do that. And I know that the Catalyst and their team will be excited too as well. So thank you for that.
Well, that would be great, because a lot of our history is lost. It went down several decades ago, but if we can do something like this, I think it would be great.
Yes,
Thank you.
Or put
Thank you
something
for
in the
bringing that up.
farmer's market there too, some kind of
Yeah.
remembrance, honor.
I think that for me, I love seeing this and where we're headed. I really have a high value for design that honors the culture and history of Waco and the historical architecture of Waco that's in our current downtown. So really liked some of the images we saw, but really hope that as you continue to design out the future phases and also work on the remaining phase, even though the designs are set, there might be some additions or add-ons that can be done to really accentuate the history of our community, both architecturally speaking, and also in the legacy of this town and what it means to so many people to see this riverfront be developed. And so I think both in the design of buildings and ensuring that we use high quality building materials, from roofing materials to masonry and bricks to windows, really ensuring that the jewel of this crown is really a jewel and built with high standards is going to be something that's important to us. And I think it would be really great to explore the history of this particular site and at the farmers market or other locations try to have some homage or incorporations that are excellent in design, but also that really honor the legacy of the community. I appreciate the no parking in front of the restaurants. I think that's going to really make the whole development better. I look forward to also hitting the farmers market in a year, and I know that's dangerous for all of us to go on record and say that because we don't know what's going to happen, but have full expectation for that. We're good on that, right? Everybody's good? Okay. I had a couple questions to see, and Jennifer, help me if this might need to be a part of a well, this part is not a part of a motion, but I really want on the remaining phase one to hear from you guys that for the development of phase one that you will try to work creatively to ensure that this is going to be something that is of highest quality, unique to Waco, and that that you'll explore adding features that do both honor the legacy and history of the community and some really cool design features. Is that something that y'all are open to?
Yes, we will.
As part of the motion, I believe that staff has negotiated to where council will be able to approve design renderings and documents for phase 4. Are y'all comfortable with that same standard being applied to what we're calling phase 3, which is the restaurants, and phase 2, which is the hotel site?
We'll be bringing the design of both of those, the mixed-use building as well as the restaurants to y'all. And, we've got a meeting tomorrow with the architect. One of the things that they asked is exactly what we're talking about. So it's part of the design scoping. And yes, we'll be exploring that, and absolutely we're fine with that.
Jennifer, do we need to amend a motion on that, or is that?
Yeah, I mean, at the hearing tonight, if council, so what's on the agenda does not include that, but certainly the person making the motion could have the PUD requirements for the new phase applied to phases 2 and 3.
Great. Do that, please. I'll try to. And then I don't need to make this as a part of the motion, but my hope is that for phase 2, which was the hotel site, now could be hotel or office, that we can get a commitment from you guys to work in conjunction with staff to try to end that in a 25, a little from 25 to 27. Is that possible? Is that something that y'all would be willing to, instead of being completed in 28?
Yeah, taking it down 2 years versus the 3. We're on board with that. I mean, if there is a project that scales out to where it would require more than we
be open to an amendment. That's right. Okay. And then some milestones in between that as well. Is that something y'all are open to? Great. And then one thing, and I don't mean to put you guys on the spot with this, Paris and Reese, but one thing that we've worked with Baylor to do is really try to work to utilize local subcontractors and partner with our 3 chambers of commerce, Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, African American Chamber of Commerce, and Greater Waco Chamber of Commerce, to really make sure that local contractors are being utilized, and wanted to see if y'all would be willing in good faith to try to utilize as many local contractors and engage in discussions with some of those organizations.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. I'm really excited for this, just to echo all the excitement that people are talking about. But it is going to be a phenomenal development, and we're thankful that you both are on our team and are looking forward to seeing this be the best project in the history of your company. Not only the jewel in the crown of Waco, but also in the Catalyst portfolio, and know that in partnering together, we're going to develop a project that is excellent and high quality, and is something that this whole entire community is going to be thrilled about.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
We do as well.
Appreciate it. And it is 5:20, and I see that we have two more work sessions, Bradley. What is the status of those work sessions, and do you want to try to engage in both of them or one of them, or what are your thoughts at this time?
Let's just do the transit realignment study. I believe that's going to take about 15 minutes, and and then we'll break after that for.
Famous last words. So we will have time for council to break and
Yes.
go to the bathroom and get some food.
Yes, we're on a 15-minute timer with Tim and Serena. They're going to head on up. This is discussion of work session 153, the Waco Transit System Fixed Route Realignment Study, also known as Reimagine Waco Transit. It's kind of a mid-plan report to the council. We're excited to hear from Tim Simon, the project manager at HEG. He'll be the primary presenter, and then of course we also have Serena Stevenson with Waco Transit here.
Good afternoon, Council. Thank you for the opportunity to present today. We're going to do an overview of where we're at currently with regard to the Bus Rapid Transit project and the options that we're moving forward with regards to the fixed route realignment. The ultimate goal is to provide a path forward for Waco Transit System and the City of Waco that improves community connectivity, minimizes travel time, and provides a cost-effectiveness of transit solutions for the citizens of Waco. Tim, I'm going to go ahead and let you take over.
Thank you very much, Serena. Thank you, Mayor and council members, for this time. We'll make sure you are able to get to the bathroom and get some food in you before the next session. So I'm going to probably skip over some slides so we have enough room for a few questions if necessary. I want to introduce our project partners. So we're doing this in coordination with Waco Transit System, City of Waco, the Waco MPO. My name's Tim Simon. I'm the project manager from Alliance Transportation Group. We're the prime consultant. Also on our team is AECOM and Ride with VIA. So as Serena said, we started off with the project goals and overview, and that's really to improve connectivity, minimize travel time, and provide freedom through transit. And that's freedom to get to your medical appointments, to go to the grocery store, to go to entertainment, to do really anything that anyone else can do in a car. So I'm really excited about all these great projects that you all are having in the Waco area, and it's really relevant because while Waco Transit hasn't changed their transit routes in over 20 years, the underlying network and the markets that are really driving transit are obviously, as I can see today at the council session with all these exciting projects, are changing. So we need to make sure that the transit network serving them is adapting as well. And so that's really the whole point of this effort. So when we go over the timeline real quick, kind of where we've been, where we're at, and where we're going. We started out in the fall with engaging with the community, asking them really what they need and want from transit. That was phase one of the public engagement process. And then now we're here. We've taken both our technical analysis and the public input to develop some alternatives to bring back to the community. So starting in April will be the phase two of our public engagement process, where we bring 3 alternatives to the public to ask them what they like and don't like, what works well, what wouldn't work well, and so that they can really have a say and input in this process. And then lastly, we'll advance one of the options and look at how you implement it and provide a turnkey solution for Serena, her team, to implement the transit project. So I want to real quickly go over public engagement. What we did, we went out to the community. We really brought the engagement to them. We attended community events, we rode on the buses, we tabled at the transit center, And we had a survey that captured a lot of great qualitative information. You see there how we were able to convert some of that qualitative information to more quantitative numbers that will help inform our recommendations. So like circular versus bidirectional service, you see 91% of the respondents wanted that bidirectional service. So we're able to take that and make sure that's represented in the alternatives we bring back to the community. And so then I'm going to not skip over these, but talk through them in one slide to shorten this presentation a little bit. But all these different maps and demographics you're seeing here are represented and layered together in what I call our transit market score. And so you can see all those maps in those previous slides are representative there on the right side of the screen. So we're looking at key destinations, looking at transit propensity, so identifying existing and future population employment patterns, transit-dependent populations, target transit riders. We're looking at multimodal connectivity. This is identifying existing and future active transportation corridors. We're also doing something that I've done this a lot in my career, done transit studies like this, but I haven't yet used the Social Vulnerability Index from CDC, and we use that for this study, which I think is really important. It helps capture the vulnerability populations in your community have felt from the change that impacted from development, all these things you're talking about, the impacts from the COVID pandemic. So it's really relevant, and all of that is factored into the layered transit markets score you see there. And so we're able, it doesn't mean that you see in the downtown area a really high score. It doesn't mean we're only going to provide transit there. What it helps us understand is how do you match the service delivery mechanism or tool with the underlying market you're serving. So we're really building these different alternatives for the entire community so that no one is left out. So from your most vulnerable populations to everyone else, so that it's truly a transit network for the Waco community in its entirety. Some of the key findings is we found opportunity to reduce service redundancies and design more intuitive service. This will make service attractive to new riders as well as make it easier for existing passengers. Opportunity to connect isolated transit markets and capture unserved travel patterns. This will help increase ridership. On-time and performance improvements will lead to efficiency and the ability to provide more transit, more frequency to more areas. And then really the need for the transit within the core of Waco and north of the Brazos River. So I want to talk a little bit about our scenario developments. We have 3 scenarios. And what's important to understand about this process and what we're going to have this conversation with the community in phase 2 of our public engagement process is that we're looking at 3 different options and not comparing them against each other, but really comparing each option to the existing transit system. So you'll see there in scenario A, we're looking at what you would do with a fixed route transit if you funded a full BRT system. In scenario B, it looks at a modified BRT investment and what you would do with the underlying fixed route system. And then scenario C would be, what if BRT wasn't funded at this time or moved forward? And so it looks at more of a blank slate is what you would do with just looking at your fixed route transit and how to improve it today. So all of this study is really focused on the fixed route transit. We're not in any way, this is related and coordinated with the BRT effort, but we're not pivoting away from that. It's really complementing it because we know that even if you did a BRT system that ran every 15 minutes over the existing system, you need to make improvements to your fixed route system because that feeds into the BRT network. And so this is really just helping complete that whole picture for what it's going to take to improve transit and giving the community, you all as the council, the steering committee, Waco Transit, and the city and the MPO options to advance forward and really all the knowledge you need to make those decisions. Is there any question on that? I know that last slide can kind of be confusing, so feel free to interrupt me.
We've actually, we've had a lot of long discussions about the BRT and utilizing the BRT and gotten the alignment study for the BRT. So are you making or maybe you're going to get to this, but are you going to be making a recommendation for what we do with the BRT and the utilization thereof, or so am I jumping ahead?
No, so that's a great time to ask that question. What think about these as you're gonna have 3 doors to walk through. Door number A, B, and C. You're gonna just know the return on investment you would get from each decision.
So you're gonna unpack each of these as we go.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And so I also wanted to comment that we came up on a couple weeks ago and had a meeting with Serena and her team and the operators who are the eyes and ears of the system. They know it better than anyone. And so they've had a hand in developing some of these alternatives, which is very valuable. And we're going to be developing these scenario profiles so you'll understand what it means in terms of performance metrics. What's your transit propensity score? You know, how much population employment densities are you hitting? How many of the social vulnerability index, you know, what's your score under that lens? So you'll see an example over there on the right for each one of the alternatives. And then at the bottom of the screen, I think it's important, it's very simplistic but important, we need to show that it's not apples to apples because 2 of those scenarios have a BRT component. So we'll isolate that and color coordinate it like you see there and pull out that component so you know the cost associated with just the fixed route and the performance that you would get from just both the fixed route and the BRT because they're not apples to apples. And so that's where we'll unpack that, and so you'll know what that means under each one of those decisions. Does that help shed some light on that? Okay. And then, so I want to go over next steps. We were obviously here today to kind of, probably I'd say the halfway point. Draft scenarios for the 3 alternatives have been submitted to Serena and her team to vet them internally. And she'll give us, her and her team will give us feedback next week, and then we'll be able to bring those forward to the public for everyone to see as draft alternatives. Once again, that's in no way like, are we saying here's where the routes are going to go? We're bringing them to the public so they can say, you know, you missed something here, you're not serving this area, or I think there should be service here. And we're going to have those conversations with the community. And we're also having those other strategic conversations that I want to make sure that everyone's aware of. So this Thursday, the team is meeting with the area industry managers meeting. We've coordinated with the Chamber of Commerce today, actually, to make sure that we're also meeting with the business community. We're actually going to be setting up a virtual meeting with the Chamber that will include the the African Chamber of Commerce, the Waco Chamber of Commerce, Hispanic Chamber of Commerce as well, and all of their representatives. So it'll be a very important meeting that's happening in April as well to make sure that they're stewards of the plan, they're educated enough to disseminate that out to all of their representations. We're also going to be meeting with the representatives from each of the neighborhood associations at the end of April. And then in addition to that, we're going to be doing what we did in the fall that was successful, going to pop-up events, you know, finding, I think, like the Wade Bowen Festival, we might show up there and get people to communicate and engage with us about these things. We're going to be just walking the beat as a police officer would, you know, going up and going into barbershops, going into areas. I talked to someone on your council today about some areas in the Hispanic community, some businesses she would want to engage with. We're going to basically meet the energy where it's at and engage with everyone. We're going to have our website up and live throughout the whole month of April as well. We have a listserv of over 400 people from the community that will be making sure that they have an opportunity to weigh in. And then riding the bus, again, tabling at the transit center, and I think that's about it. So lots to come, and then we'll take all that engagement in May and all those performance metrics and make any adjustments to those alternatives that we heard and we you know, are comfortable with vetting them and approving them, and then bring back basically, you know, lay out, here's the performance metrics, here's the return on investment, and here's what we heard from the public for each alternative so that everyone has what they need to do to make a decision on what to advance. And then moving forward, we'll advance one of the alternatives and go through the process of doing a detailed costing and funding plan and implementation plan for how we get that service out on the street to serve your community.
We will also be looking at electrification of vehicles and just different options with that as well. So.
Correct. Any questions?
Quick question for y'all. In terms of the seeking community input, will y'all have the information available in Spanish as well?
Absolutely.
And then could we have it sent to us maybe through the city manager's office when some of these community pop-up events are, so we can be sure to push that out to our constituents?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We'll be updating our website so people will know where we're at. We'll be pushing that out to everyone we communicate, the neighborhood associations, the chambers, everyone on the steering committee, and everyone on our targeted stakeholder list as well.
Excellent. Thank you. This is exciting, and I know so many of our residents are dependent on public transportation, and having this be studied and really, I love the input of residents, and I think having the actual bus drivers themselves is such a thoughtful addition. So excited to see what your team comes up with.
I'll just make the comment, I'm sorry we made you rush through this, because I mean, some of the slides you had to skip over are very compelling and kind of the groundwork of the whole project, so.
They'll all be on the website as well, too,
Yeah,
all those maps.
I encourage all of us to read back through that, because that's very interesting stuff. But yeah, very supportive of, we're trying to figure out what to do here, so we need to get as much input as we can.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep,
Thank you for this presentation. I am, bus rapid transit was one of those things that, we were, it came and we were looking so fast as this is going to be, the key to solution. But one of the things I appreciate about this is that the deeper dive with transit, and especially getting as much community impact as you have, community engagement as you have, working specifically with our frontline folks, which is the staff and the driver. It probably allowed us to measure twice before cutting once, with what we thought was, oh, this is the way. But, even though it's a delay, I think it's definitely an opportunity for us to do better by and for our citizens. And especially with the influx of industry being built, making sure that we're doing the right thing in the right manner. So I'm quite pleased to see this timeline, but even though it seems like it's a pause or a delay, it is a necessary one, and I'm appreciative of it.
Thank you, and may I just respond as well? I think it's important to understand remember to think of those as 3 doors to choose. If you decide to walk your door, alternative C, where you're just looking at optimizing your fixed route transit system, nowhere does that prohibit implementing BRT in the future. All it does is strengthen your foundation to build on. So all 3 alternatives are going to be viable alternatives to move on.
Absolutely.
And then I also want to thank Bradley for providing the, I think it's placer data. So we have looked at streetlight data as well, but we're going to gut check our scenarios with that and provide you with, or work with whoever you want. I think it was Kent with the city on gut checking some of our travel patterns with some of the proposed routing alignments. So that'll be a really valuable tool.
Great, glad to hear.
Thank you.
I'm thrilled to see our residents have access to more thoughtful and better transit. So really excited to see this roll through. I'll just, communication is something that this council has high priority for. And there's been a couple of other things that we've done to really implement strategic communication that reaches some community members that are hard to connect with. So my hope is that we'll utilize some of the previous and well-received strategies in the past that some of our other city departments might have utilized that, where they've seen success, whether that be door hangers or block walking or whatever. We've had the advantage over the years of really working hard to engage our public. So hopefully some of those strategies can be implemented here so we can hear from folks, and really look forward to hearing the final recommendations and being able to evaluate those as we move forward, and are excited as we go.
Absolutely, and our public engagement process is very adaptable, so we're all ears for any other ideas to include in that April-long process.
We might have to post an agenda at the Wade Bowen Festival because although it's sometimes hot, it's probably going to be a good show. So there might be a quorum of council there for that at that tent.
I'm pretty sure they will be.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Sorry, I need to be ready to go here. All right, are there any requests for future agenda items? If not, we'll recess the work session and reconvene the regular session for executive session as read into the record by the interim city secretary. But we're not doing an executive session? Okay, so we'll just recess the work session and reconvene regular session. But we'll take a break between now and the meeting at 6. Thanks, everybody. We'll be back at 6 p.m.